Both of PSG's central midfielders drop deep, drawing 3 Bayern players toward them. Doué runs into this space, pulling Upamecano out of the defense. This opens up a large area, which Paris exploits through opposite movements. Kvaratskhelia feints a run and gains an advantage as a result. This is a perfect example of how PSG breaks down defenses. But what is the playing philosophy behind it? Why has PSG been so dominant in recent years, and how is Luis Enrique currently evolving modern football?
With my own idea and being managing that team 1 year and 2 months. A different team with a different perspective and mentality.
Congratulations, a Champions League final.
It means a lot, a lot. Poco tengo nada que esconder. A clear idea where I want to be.
Paniqué.
Modern football is obsessed with structure. Every movement is calculated. Every space controlled. Every player connected. And maybe no team represented this better than FC Bayern under Vincent Kompany. Bayern's style of play is based on constantly creating gaps in the opponent's defensive line. Kimmich drops back into defense. Kane and Gnabry occupy the space in the center and overload their own third. The opponent has to make a decision. Do I defend the space, or do I follow and mark the man? Luis Enrique has a very similar approach. Luis Enrique uses a back 3 for the high build-up play. Mendes stays deeper, while Hakimi pushes forward as an asymmetrical fullback. This allows Doué to act as an inverted winger, enabling PSG to attack with 5 or even 6 players. PSG's entire attacking structure is built around a central idea, stretching the back line as far as possible. This way, each forward ties up an opposing defender, whom he can pull out of position as he drops back. Through their 3-5 structure, PSG are constantly able to play directly into the attacking line. Because the distance between midfield and attack is so large, massive spaces begin to appear between the opposition's defensive and midfield lines. And once the ball reaches that zone, PSG immediately overload the side of play. In this example, even the right winger drifts over to support the attack. Kvaratskhelia once again positions himself deeper. Doué pulls Bayern's center-back out of the defensive line, and suddenly, the space behind the defense opens up again. But now comes the important question: who actually attacks that space? That's what makes PSG so dangerous. They are unpredictable, because unlike the opening sequence, this time it isn't Kvaratskhelia making the run, it's Neves. And because Doué occupies the left side despite originally being the right winger, Bayern completely lose their defensive references. No one tracks Neves, no one reacts in time. And for a single moment, PSG create exactly what they want: complete chaos inside the last line. Luis Enrique's entire philosophy revolves around one thing: constantly creating new spaces and overloads all over the pitch. In this sequence, Vitinha drops deeper and opens up space in the center. And that space becomes even more dangerous because Dembele pulls another center-back out of the defensive line, completely disrupting the opponent's structure. PSG immediately reposition themselves around the new space and overload the side once again. And because of that, huge space opens up on the right flank, allowing PSG to create a 2 versus 1 situation out wide. Doué drifts inside, Hakimi overlaps, and within seconds, PSG turn it into a dangerous attack. And this is what makes PSG so difficult to defend. It's not just about finding space inside the defensive line. It's about manipulating the entire pitch, creating advantages everywhere, moving the ball forward as quickly as possible, and constantly forcing the opponent into unorganized defensive situations.
Se trata de ganar teniendo una identidad, se trata de ganar haciendo crecer a un equipo de fútbol para que todos en Francia y fuera de Francia sepan: el Paris Saint-Germain juega así, juego con el Paris Saint-Germain, juega de esta manera, me van a hacer esto. O sea, imprimir al club y al equipo de una identidad la que yo...
PSG's playing identity is based primarily on the offense. Because PSG have so many technically gifted attackers, Luis Enrique constantly tries to place them into isolated 1 versus 1 situations. And one of the clearest examples of this happens during the deep build-up. The forwards position themselves as high as possible, while the defense and midfield stay deep inside their own half. That creates a massive gap between the opponent's midfield and defensive line. which means that after a long ball, PSG often only need to break through one line instead of two. And because the pitch becomes much more stretched, every player is forced into individual duels, creating exactly the kind of 1 versus 1 situations PSG want. In this sequence, PSG's goalkeeper plays a long ball toward Kvaratskhelia, who drops deeper and pulls Upamecano out of the defensive line. And suddenly, Bayern are left with only 2 defenders in the last line, opening up huge spaces behind them. Dembele immediately attacks that space, and within seconds, PSG create another dangerous attack. This sequence follows a very similar idea. PSG circulate the ball backwards, intentionally inviting the opponent to press higher up the pitch. And the moment the press begins, PSG manipulate it. The advanced fullbacks and central players suddenly drop deeper into their own half. Because the opponent is already locked into the pressing phase, defenders begin following their movements man-to-man, with every PSG player dragging an opponent away from the defensive line. And once again, a huge amount of space opens up behind the pressing structure. PSG immediately exploit it with a long ball from the goalkeeper. And the moment the first duel is secured, the midfielders and fullbacks aggressively push forward again, either to receive the layoff or to attack the newly opened spaces behind the defense. So Luis Enrique's playing philosophy centered around progressing the ball forward as quickly as possible to involve the front line and create isolated 1 versus 1 moments. And the midfield plays a crucial role in making that happen. At times, they drop deeper and form a block alongside the defense, creating more space and less defensive density for the attackers higher up the pitch. But in other moments, they push forward and join the attack themselves, forming a 5 or even 6-man attacking line. And that creates another huge problem for defenders. Because PSG constantly occupy the entire last line, forcing defenders to leave their positions and follow movements out of the defensive structure. And the moment those defenders step out, spaces begin to open behind them. Spaces PSG exploit through opposite movements, rotations, and perfectly timed runs into the last line. And maybe that's the most fascinating part about this PSG team. Because these ideas didn't appear out of nowhere. A lot of Europe's biggest clubs are slowly moving toward this style of football. Manipulating space, stretching defensive structures, creating chaos intentionally. And maybe that's the bigger question now. If teams like PSG are already moving football in this direction, how many other clubs are starting to do the same? Because when you look at Bayern Munich under Vincent Kompany, you start seeing very similar patterns. The same manipulation of space, the same movements away from the ball, the same idea of breaking defensive structures apart. Let's watch this video.